Welcome to today's Enterprise AI World webinar, brought to you by Couchbase, Data Software, and Glean. Now, I am Mary D. Ojala, co-editor of Enterprise AI World magazine, and I will be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Bridging the Gap, Integrating AI into Existing Systems and Workflows. Now, before we begin, I want to explain how you can be a part of this broadcast. There will be a question and answer session, so if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we don't get to all of them, they will be answered later on. Now, let me introduce our speakers for today. Matthew Groves, DevRel Engineer, Couchbase; Jared Johnson, Senior Technology Evangelist, Data Software; Ben Wiley, Solutions Engineer, Glean. Each speaker today is going to deliver a brief presentation, and then we are going to dive into a group discussion. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass the event over to our first speaker to kick things off. Welcome to the broadcast, Matthew.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on today. Let me adjust this here real quick. So I want to talk to you today about your data architecture, essentially, and how can we build this for tomorrow's apps that are using AI. So this is the landscape as we see it right now. We've got some issues along with all the good things that go with it. We've got a lot of moving targets, it kind of feels like. We've got new products, new models, new frameworks, and emerging and shifting standards. And these things kind of lead to architecture that can be increasingly complex. It leads to something called database sprawl, which we'll talk about today for sure, scalability problems, and poor developer experience. So it's similar to the challenges we've had, for the last 50 years or whatever, but it's just times 1,000, right? So we have to deal with managing more compute. How do we manage our vector embeddings? How do we think about ephemeral storage? In terms of models, how do we version those models and store them? Where do we host them? How do we serve them up? Managing data for your agentic applications, not just the operational data, but the actual data that the agents themselves are generating or tracking what they're doing. And of course, data processing, which includes chunking in unstructured data, which we'll talk about today for sure. Our customers at Couchbase are telling us that their data needs are changing, and they want to deliver those great experiences, personalized, natural language. They want to take advantage of the AI and the LLM technologies that are out there, and they need some JSON data storage. JSON is a great data storage format for the various inputs and outputs of AI, and they want support everywhere: on-prem, cloud, mobile, and of course they want the developers to be productive. It's one thing if it's a great tool, but if it takes 9 months or whatever to get familiar with it, we better have something familiar that you can work with. And of course, modern requirements of large-scale deployments, lots of users, lots of data, flexibility, and so on. If you take a look at the AI architecture these days, it can be a little overwhelming, right? There's lots of frameworks and tools and standards and models for data ingestion, for model access, even model training if you're getting into that area, data analysis, creating and managing those AI workflows, agents running autonomously. It's a lot to look at. And so you're hit with kind of a massive complexity and massive amounts of options. And what do you do in this situation? And I'm going to call this yesterday's data architecture. It's not really the way to go for AI, I don't think. So you can think about an application or an enterprise where you're bringing in, we need caching, so let's bring in a caching server. We need vector data, let's bring in a vector database store. We need mobile data, let's bring in a mobile database. And before you know it, you've got maybe half a dozen or more different tools out there. This is the database sprawl I was talking about, where it may work to start with, but in the long term, you've got all these SDKs to manage, versions, licenses, patches, upgrades, the flow of data between them. Can be very, very difficult to manage that. And with AI, it makes it even worse because now you have your data spread all the way around. And so how do you get that data into the models to provide the best context and reduce hallucinations. AI requires flexibility and control, right? The old paradigm is just, we're going to accept some data from a user. It's a pretty strict, rigid format, and then we provide a response based on that format. Whereas AI, we've got this kind of this loop, we have to move the data around, and it's natural language, and we have to interpret that, and we have to find the related language semantically, and it's a lot more moving parts involved in this new paradigm. The agentic workflows, they could be talking to each other as well, agents talking to other agents. It makes it more complicated. But notice that the data format being passed between them is JSON, and I think Capella and Couchbase is in a really great place to handle JSON data. So this is the AI services that we've just launched, in fact, to Capella. And it contains many of these building blocks that will help you manage all the moving parts of AI requirements. So all those there in the middle: data ingestion, unstructured, vectorization services, agent catalog to deal with agentic applications, model service, all built on top of transactional, analytical, mobile core database that Couchbase has had for years. So if we look through a typical AI application, maybe it's a RAG application, maybe it's some part of this or some subset of this, but these AI services supports the entire life cycle of AI applications. So just to go from the very left here, you may not always do this, but just to cover everything, you want to bring in some unstructured data. This is a collection of PDF or docs or images of text files and documents that you want to bring in and analyze and search through from your own enterprise, from your own database of information that you've collected over the years. And so bringing that in, you have to go through a process of what's called chunking. And that can be a very difficult process to manage. And so with AI services, we say, let's bring that into the database and have the database automatically parse that information, chunk it, and then run it through a vectorization service so that anytime you add a document to that S3 bucket, let's say, it'll automatically get picked up and added to that database, and it's already vectorized and ready to be searched. And this vectorization service can also work on just data in your database. So the traditional, we're reading and writing data to and from our database. We want to vectorize some of that as well. So once that data is first entered or updated, it'll be automatically vectorized. We don't have to, go through and create our own external process to manage that. It's right there in the database layer. And that can use something like OpenAI or Amazon Bedrock, some sort of external model service if you want to, but there are some benefits to also hosting the model yourself. And so that's why we've had the model service added to this suite of services. So you can spin up, one of many different LLMs or embedding models, including like NVIDIA, Nemotron, and DeepSeek and things like that. Not only can you host them in your same tenant, which provides some latency benefits, it also provides some privacy benefits. We're not sending data across the wire to some other organization. It's within my own tenant. And you can also configure this with guardrails and keyword filtering and semantic caching so that you can kind of customize the way your model service works. There's also, in terms of building your AI application, there's some things like AI functions in here that are pretty cool. It's a way for you to write a SQL query and add an AI function to it. So for doing things like translation or summarization or text generation or categorization, a number of different AI functions there. You can just drop into a regular SQL query and apply LLMs right there in your application. And finally, agent catalog, which I suspect we'll have a lot of questions about or that will be addressed by agent catalog. The idea here is that you can index and search all the various tools and prompts in your agentic application, not only just to have them cataloged and versioned and searchable, but you can also store the various sessions that these tools and prompts are being used in. So then you can examine the output of them, either with a person or with some other sort of model for correctness, or just verifying that, hey, our LLM is saying and doing the right things, or maybe we should tweak the prompts and the agents. So there is a cost of poor architecture in AI applications. If you go the traditional data sprawl route, you're going to end up with possibly in these situations where you have a framework that collapses under user demand. an integration problem where you have that whole sprawl of data that you have to move around and translate, and bottlenecks, and just growing technical debt. So why Couchbase? How are we going to help with this problem? So one of the things we like to do is with our customers is to help reduce the high cost of operations. So this is a good thing to have in general, and with AI it makes it even better, because the more data you have spread out, the less likely you are to be able to use that data in an effective way to create a RAG application or an agentic application that can have the complete picture of the data. And so the other benefits of this, of course, is reduce costs, save on time, help your developers code better. There's fewer SDKs they have to work with and patch and learn and manage. Some of our customers who are using Couchbase right now for various use cases, these are not just AI use cases, but large scale caching, for instance, is LinkedIn. Domino's using us for analytics, for doing real-time marketing. Lots of great features there that you could piece together with other technologies, but it's just going to be, again, that data sprawl. This is our total data platform right here. We have a solid transactional, analytical, mobile base, and additional those AI workloads that we've added there. We have in-memory architecture for automatic caching, great distributed high availability, so whether it's between data centers or within a data center, and a collection of AI framework integrations and SDK languages. So you can give it a try for yourself. Totally free tier, Couchbase Capella. Go to this link here, sign up. No credit card. It's totally free. Just give it a try and check it out. And that's all I have. I want to say thank you very much. I'm going to hand it back to our host.
Hey, so thanks, Matthew. I'm Jared with CData. It is a pleasure to be here. Thanks to everyone who is taking time out of their day to join us. In lieu of talking about our products fully, I wanted to take some time today to share with everyone some of the results that we saw from our data connectivity survey that we issued to over 200 product leaders, product builders, looking at the state of AI and data connectivity and how all of that works together, what people are seeing, the insights that they're gaining, the problems that they're running into. So I think the biggest thing that we took away is that AI ROI, the return on the investment in AI, is no longer constrained to the models. I think OpenAI is going to release 5.2 imminently. I think I heard somebody say even tomorrow. The models are always improving. The vendors are always releasing new models. I think Mistral released a new local model that is supposedly as good as anything that DeepSeek has released so far. So it's an exciting place to be. But what we're finding is that the model choice doesn't matter as much anymore. And what you're running into is building that infrastructure, building an architecture that fuels your AI initiatives and solving that problem. And so we surveyed over 200 data and AI leaders, and we kind of coalesced all of those results down to 3 pieces that organizations need in order to capitalize on AI. And that is context, so the LLM having a full understanding of the data that they're looking at; connectivity, being able to connect to all of the data that an organization is working with, that they want to build AI initiatives on top of; and then control. So is the data access, is the data itself, is it well managed, is it governed? Does your organization know what your agents are doing? These are all of the things that organizations need to look to solve, and these are likely the largest predictors of successful AI adoption as we move into this more AI-centric era. So what I want to do with the rest of my time is walk through 3 of the questions that we asked, the results and some of the implications from those results, and then I'll share 2 customer stories, and then we'll move on to Ben. So one of the first questions that we asked was, how satisfied are you with your data connectivity approach as it stands right now? So varying degrees, but we only had 6% of our respondents that actually replied with the very satisfied, that highly satisfied result that you're looking for. And what that means is that only 6% of enterprises are really in a situation where their data infrastructure is AI ready. So again, as I said, the AI readiness gap, it's not about model choice. It's about that connectivity, the context, and the control that you need to be able to run AI in production. Tons of us are working with AI in experimentation or pilots, and bridging beyond that pilot stage, that prototyping stage, requires that connectivity, that context and control in your data infrastructure in order to make sure that the AI has access to the data that it needs when it needs it. So the second question that we asked was, what percentage of your AI development time is currently spent on building out that connectivity, that first piece that we talked about? And over 70% of organizations are spending more than a quarter of their AI implementation time. So the teams that are building these AI initiatives, building chatbots, building agentic workflows, building autonomous agents, at least 25% of their time, if not more, is being spent building out connections to that data. And so when your engineering efforts are going into the pipeline building, the connector building, the integrations, that's time that you're not spending on innovating. That's time that you're not spending on building outcomes. It's time that you don't get to spend on rolling out your initiatives, to implementing them across your entire organization, enabling your org on AI. It's time spent that is valuable, but doesn't really get into the initiatives that you're working on. It doesn't allow your team the freedom to explore new models or explore new frameworks if all of their time is being spent trying to get the data to the models, get the data to the agents in the way that they need. And so the third question that I want to walk through with everyone today is really around how many data sources organizations feel that they need access to. And nearly half of the providers that we spoke with, the respondents to the survey, said that they needed access to 6 or more data sources for a given AI use case. And a given AI use case, that's just one system. That's one application. That's one agent. You could have a customer support copilot that needs access to your CRM and your ticketing system. It could need access to things like product telemetry data that's stored in a warehouse. And that's one use case. Well, do you also need an FP&A copilot? Do you need an autonomous support agent? Do you need a sales assistant? All of these agents, all of these workflows, all of these AI initiatives need access to more and more data. And so each AI use case that you add creates more fragmentation, more points of failure. It blows up the context of the LLM that you're working with. So narrowing down that AI infrastructure or that data infrastructure to enable AI, it becomes even more important than it ever has. So we'll walk through 2 customer stories. The first is Empower. So this is an organization that we worked with. They were building out legacy pipelines. They were moving all of their data into Snowflake, but they were using legacy software, legacy architecture in order to do that. It was difficult to distribute. They were brittle. So if something broke, it was hard to fix, hard to maintain, and then hard to redistribute across the organization to get data where it needed to go. And there was a lot of manual work that was being done. So the automation that we're seeking, the intelligent data replication that organizations are looking for just wasn't happening. And then the biggest point, I think, for them was that a 12-hour lag. So whenever the replication started to when it finished took 12 hours on average. And that meant that any AI initiatives that they were working on didn't actually have real data. The data was 12 hours old. And for a lot of things, if you're looking at historical reporting, 12-hour-old data doesn't matter. But if you need something in real time, if you are tracking a customer's experience, if you're tracking a customer support case, if you're looking at sales data, if you're looking at web traffic, trying to understand what's going on your website, 12-hour data is essentially meaningless. And so by adopting CData Sync, which is our data replication platform, they were able to reduce the pipeline time by 91%, so going from 90 minutes to 8 minutes on average for those pipelines, helping to reduce that lag. And then they were seeing 6 times more frequent Snowflake updates. So their warehouse was updating 6 times as often, which meant that they were getting fresher, more complete data, a better picture. And really what they were looking for was to build out a modern infrastructure to help their Cortex AI initiatives. So as they're building out agentic workflows and as they're building out chatbots built on top of Cortex, which is in Snowflake, they need that real-time data. They need that near real-time data. They need fresh data, as fresh as it can be. So with CData Sync, they were getting that incremental replication that reduces pipeline time. They were getting flexible scheduling, and enabling those AI-driven use cases that they were pursuing that weren't supported by the methods that they were using before. And just as notes, CData Sync is a modern data ingestion framework. So there's schema change detection that's handled automatically. There's error handling. This really helped them with their patient-critical HER data, and then accelerated that Snowflake ROI thanks to the cost structure, the pricing structure of CData Sync, which is connection-based and not consumption-based. All right, so one more customer story. I want to talk about Belden. So this was an organization that had marketing data spread across Pardot, Google Ads, Google Analytics, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. They were using it. They wanted to be able to report on it, build AI initiatives on top of it, and really struggling to get connected with it. Anybody that's worked with the Facebook API in particular knows that it changes basically every day. And so they were struggling with building out those custom connectors, building out custom data warehousing pipelines. And so what they opted for was adapting our Connect AI platform, which provides a real-time managed MCP platform for connectivity from AI and BI and reporting tools. So giving you the access that you need for all of your organization to the data that you're working with. This allowed them to be able to do that cross-system reporting. They were able to analyze data across different systems through a single platform without having to build individual pipelines and maintain them. And I think the most important value that they got out of adopting Connect AI is this notion of self-service. So they weren't dependent on IT to build and maintain pipelines. They were able to empower marketing, customer experience, sales, leadership teams to access the data that they needed when they needed it in the ways that they needed, whether that was with Tableau or in a chatbot like Claude. So getting comprehensive access to all of their data. So I'll leave you with this. So we got 3 QR codes here. Connect AI is our managed MCP platform. You've got a free trial for that. CData Sync is our ETL tool, again, a free trial. And then if you want to download that report, the State of AI Data Connectivity Report, you can scan that QR code there and get reading. So with that, I will turn things over to Ben.
Cool. Thank you, Jared. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Ben Wiley. I'm a solutions engineer here at Glean, and I spend most of my time with organizations that are trying to move AI out of experimentation and into real work. So for today, our theme is relatively simple. If you think about the next chapter of enterprise AI, the differentiator is not just models or data volume, it's really context. How well AI understands your people, your processes, your systems, and honestly, the messy reality of how work actually gets done. So I want to talk about what it takes to build something like a super intelligent enterprise, as we call it here, on top of the systems that you already have, and how to do it in a way that's practical rather than theoretical. So at Glean, we work with some of the largest enterprises in the world to help them bring work AI into their organization. So what T-Mobile, Uber, and Dell have in common are not the perfect tech stacks. In most cases, they have a lot of legacy homegrown systems, and operate in heavily regulated environments, and have pretty conservative risk profiles. So despite these challenging environments, Glean is able to deliver enterprise context in even the most challenging tech stacks. And so while many organizations are looking to transform the enterprise with AI, the truth is that most struggle to enable teams with reliable, trustworthy AI. In our recent research, only 1 in 5 leaders said the outputs from their AI agents and tools are consistently reliable. And obviously, this is a massive problem for organizations that are trying to move faster and are hoping AI can deliver agility at scale. And the challenge is that if employees can't trust the answers, they just stop using the tools. Or they're stuck constantly validating those answers, which eliminates most of the value and the time saving. So when we talk with teams, the reliability issue that usually comes back to the fact that AI tools lack the enterprise context they need. And so when you look across those organizations in particular, looking to become super intelligent enterprises, their investments typically fall into 2 big buckets. The first is to reimagine the customer experience. This is everything from more personalized service to shorter time to resolution, to proactive outreach rather than reactive support, and so on and so forth. And the second is to create an operational advantage, using AI to reduce back office friction, speed up decisions, and automate manual processes. And ultimately, this is to enable people to spend more time on work that actually moves the needle and drives revenue to the bottom line. So what's interesting is that almost everyone shares these goals. We talk to every company out there, but only a minority feel that they're really hitting them today with their AI initiatives. And so on the revenue side, expectations are high. A majority of C-suite leaders expect AI to drive meaningful revenue growth over the next few years. But when you ask who has actually demonstrated their expected level of impact so far, that number is much smaller. And the issue is not a lack of ideas. It's really because AI is often running in isolation from the systems and workflows that shape the customer journey. And the same phenomena shows up in operations. Most leaders expect AI to reduce costs. Many have run pilots that show promise in lab settings, yet fewer than 1 in 5 say they have actually seen tangible savings at scale. And again, this is usually not a model or LLM problem. It actually speaks to the difficulty of embedding AI into cross-functional processes that span multiple legacy systems and teams. And so the pattern is clear. Ambition is high, but turning that into real outcomes is difficult. And we see 3 root causes across all of the customers that we work with. First, AI on its own does not understand your business. Out of the box, a model has no idea how your products are structured, what your policies say, or how work is supposed to flow across departments. And so without that context, you get answers that sound fluent, but are not relevant to your business and even introduce significant risks. The second is that people resist change. Everyone knows that change management can be hard. It's not because they dislike AI in principle, but because every new tool competes with the systems and the targets that they already have. So if AI feels bolted on to an existing system, adoption typically falls off as soon as the launch buzz fades. And then third, AI projects are popping up everywhere. Each team runs their own pilots, select different tools, and measure success differently. And so without this shared foundation as an organization, it's almost impossible to see what's working and what is not working. And your enterprise already has an enormous amount of context. It's just scattered everywhere. Transaction data in your systems of record, policies and decisions and documents and tickets, tribal knowledge inside chat threads and emails, patterns of collaboration in calendars and project tools. If AI can only see one of these sources, it'll sound smart, but it will miss important pieces or context. And when it can see all of them in a permission-aware way, it can do something much more useful and valuable. It can answer questions with the right source of truth for that person. It can suggest next steps in a workflow because it understands both the processes and the current state. And it can even highlight risks or opportunities that span multiple systems. And so this is what we mean when we say an enterprise that feels more super intelligent. The intelligent comes from the connected context and not from replacing all of your systems, but providing one place to understand how it all fits together. So here is a simple playbook that we see working in all of the organizations that we work with that have heavy legacy footprints. Step 1 is map the context that you already have for each function. List the systems of record, so CRM, ticketing, HRIS, financial systems, wikis, and even code repositories. Then really just write down what each one of them knows. That is the context that you want AI to learn from, not replace. Step 2, connect safely in read-only mode. Use connectors or APIs into those systems and let AI search, retrieve, and summarize across them. Don't include any actions in the third-party systems just yet. The goal is to give people better visibility without changing any behavior at this point. And then step 3 is once you trust those answers, add guardrails and start to automate the boring parts. Keep identity, permissions, logging, and approvals in place. Let AI draft responses, fill in forms, or kick off well-understood steps while humans still stay responsible for the outcome. This lets you leverage context stored in your legacy tools instead of fighting it, and gives you a path from pure retrieval to real workflow support. And so while I am biased at Glean, we've taken this approach to create the Glean Work AI platform. Our horizontal platform connects to your core applications, understands the relationship between people, data, and processes, and then uses that context to power the assistants and the agents across the tools that people already use. So when you approach AI as a context problem, every department becomes an opportunity instead of a separate project. The end state is not one AI system that replaces everything. It's a layer that understands and orchestrates the systems that you already have, so every department can move a bit closer to that super intelligent enterprise vision. And finally, if you'd like to see a walkthrough of our AI platform, our Work AI platform, we'd love to tailor it to your industry and the use cases that you have in mind. You can book a demo by scanning the QR code on the slide or visit the URL below. Cool. Thank you all for listening in, and back to you, Mary D.
Okay, well, thank you, all three of you. And there was a comment that came in about QR codes, and I was thrilled that all three of you had QR codes in there. So we are meeting customer expectations here, I think. So as you were talking, the three of you, it occurred to me that we're seeing organizations move towards a more tailored, a more workflow centric AI, not just AI for the sake of AI. But what you didn't talk about as much as maybe I was expecting was about governance and compliance frameworks. How do those evolve? And what's, in your experience, what's likely to be overlooked when it comes to things like governance and compliance?
Yeah,
Any of you could jump in.
Yeah, I can take a first crack at this. I think one of the things that people typically run into whenever they're building some sort of AI workflow or some sort of AI platform for a department or organization is that there's this massive challenge of handling permissions at scale. So if you're indexing, if you're querying for data that exists and all of this unstructured information, how do you ensure that someone on your team isn't able to see your CEO's salary, for example, that lives in some document? So we've taken this approach where everything is what we call permissions aware or permissions enforced, and we basically pull in permissions data from each system and then tie that to a user's identity as well as the piece of information or document that they're querying from. And this ensures that when someone surfaces information in a query, that they're not seeing something that they're not supposed to. So that's one of the most important pieces that I've seen from a lot of the customers that I've worked with.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories about people who have actually gotten to see some of that salary data, which they really shouldn't have seen. Yes, indeed. Jared, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I think this phrase has made its way around the internet, but they say that the S in AI stands for security. I'll let that one sink in. And it's evolved into say the S in MCP, the Model Context Protocol, stands for security. I think, Ben, I think you nailed it. I think what you're looking at is you want to make sure that your agents, it is clear who they are operating and acting on the behalf of. So if you're building an agent that is designed to provide conversational analytics with your enterprise data, that agent, the permissions of that agent needs to reflect the permissions of the person using that chatbot so that you're getting this enterprise level security that you've already built out, right? If you're using Salesforce, you have permissions in Salesforce the way that you want them for a reason. There's no reason to then go and create some other user, some other role, some other permission set just for AI use cases. 99% of the time we see customers using AI agents to act on the behalf of a specific user with specific permissions. And so you want to propagate that. And then Ben, you said something in your presentation, I think in the second step, where you start with read-only access. And that's, I think, the next piece. And that's probably the piece that needs to be overlooked or tends to get overlooked is the idea that you need further permissioning within whatever layer you're using to access your external data. So I might have read-write permission to Salesforce, but maybe the agent that I'm acting through or the agent that I'm acting on behalf of doesn't really need that. Certainly doesn't need the capability to just flat delete opportunities. And so whatever framework, whatever layer you're building to provide your agents access to your data systems should include some further downscoping of permissions just to handle those edge use cases as you're building things out to make sure that everybody is doing only what they're supposed to do.
Hear, hear. Matthew?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of great answers. I want to go a little bit lower level though. I think that the really the core issue is trust in LLMs and what they're going to say and do. I think that's really one of the main factors as well. We have this analogy at Couchbase. An AI application should be seen as a race track, not a drag race, right? So each lap it should get better, right? And that can be done by monitoring and logging responses, so you know what the LLM is actually doing and saying. Either monitor that with a person, or with a separate model, or some combination of those things. I always thought about when you call a customer service line, they say the call is being monitored for quality control or whatever. And I think that should be done with LMs as well. And so that's what we're trying to do with our agent catalog and our agent debugging services, is to provide a mechanism for you to monitor and see what's actually going on.
Yeah, I think you're right that the trust issue is very important, and trust seems to be declining in general. So how do you cope with that? What do you do to build the trust? Ben's nodding. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you ask. I think if you're, asking some admins that oversee these AI systems and these AI agent orchestrations, if they, have zero visibility into what's happening, then they're automatically going to distrust the stuff that's happening. They're not going to be able to tell that, an agent updated a Salesforce record or made changes to a document. And if they're unable to kind of see into that, then they're automatically going to lose trust in whatever system that they're working with. So I think that's the first. And then end users, if they're not able to understand the underlying information and validate that everything is 100% accurate from the documents, the databases that it's being pulled from, then they're not going to 100%, trust the information that's being displayed to them. So those are the kind of the two perspectives that I've seen from, both admins and end users.
Okay. As you were talking, I like that the drag race analogy that you had there. Yeah, that's a good one. And I sort of related to that. I'm wondering when you're looking at all of these AI tools, what workflows should be prioritized for AI integration? I'm going to throw that one to you, Matthew, to start with.
Sure. Yeah, so I think was it Ben or Jared that mentioned the boring parts, right? That should be the ones that we try to get rid of, right? So any sort of workflows where people are still involved that really probably don't need to be and can be a bottleneck, right? So for instance, when I contact my travel agent, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes I'm asking questions that an agentic app could probably answer without having to wait on a person. Like, oh, yes, you have the drink package, or no, you don't have the drink package, or, let me add the drink package for you. It's all drink package based stuff. But there's still some tasks that are something that a human would have to do. But if we can delegate as many of those to an agentic app as possible, I think that's where to start. The boring stuff, so to speak.
Jared?
Yeah, so I think we can dig a little further into that. And the boring stuff also tends to be the stuff that takes the longest. Anybody in a sales org should be able to run a report in Salesforce. They should be able to get information about the opportunities that they're working, or pull a lead list, or understand, telemetry about the accounts that they own. What industries are they a part of? How big are they? Slice that. That's native to Salesforce, built in, no problem. What starts to take time is when you need to look at Salesforce and Jira and Snowflake and NetSuite. So now I have to pull this data from Salesforce. I have to pull this data from Jira. I have to pull this data from Snowflake. I have to pull this data from NetSuite. And then I have to figure out how to put all of that together in a way that's meaningful. And what we've seen is that the LLMs are really good at identifying well-defined relationships. So if there's a unique key across all data points that's unique to a given customer or a given product or whatever, that's consistent across all systems, then the LLM can easily pull all of that data in and build that relationship and build that multi-system report that would have taken hours, if not days, for an individual to do. And we know how to do it. Anybody that's run a multi-system report knows how to do it. They've done it before. So you can easily build trust by just asking your agent to build a report that you've already built. Does it align? Is it correct? If not, then you correct it, right? You can't really train, the LLMs per se, but you can train within the context of your chat conversation, or you can adjust your agent's instructions to better align with the outcomes that you're looking for. So that's what I would say, is take those boring cross-system workflows and prioritize based on those.
Yeah.
That also relates back to the trust question, doesn't it? Because if I like that idea of take something you already know and test it out, and if you give that to somebody and say, you know what, this thing that you have been doing manually with all these different tools and bringing them all together and spending hours trying to analyze all this, well, if AI can do it in a fraction of the time, there you have a pretty good not only ROI calculation, but adding to the trust to say, well, take a look at it. Be the human in the loop, and then maybe you'll get the trust, and maybe you'll get them more acclimatized to using a new workflow pattern. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with everything that Jared said. I think those are a lot of the workflows that we see clients focus on first tend to be the ones that they need to pull data from many different systems to build a report or execute on tasks. So I 100% agree with what you described there. A lot of times when we're working with clients, both in a pilot or even during an actual rollout, it's kind of like consulting in a way, but the way that we kind of approach this is we'll build a matrix where one axis is level of effort and the other is level of impact. And then we'll basically take the use cases that they're thinking through and plot them on this matrix. And this helps us identify which ones to kind of tackle first. Typically, we're going to focus on the low effort, high impact ones first. And then from there, like the other thing that we like to focus on as we're thinking through these is make sure that we're tying all of these use cases back to some measurable KPI. So at the end of the day, we can actually prove ROI. I see a lot of customers just try to hinge their ROI on productivity gains. And I think it's more impactful to look at like tangible KPI metrics.
Mm-hmm. Going back to the race that Matthew brought up, it's an interesting question, though, about balancing this push for a rapid AI adoption with the need to build a sort of organizational confidence and trust and getting buy-in from people. Matthew, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So from my point of view, I think, one of the things we see a lot is, like you mentioned, rapid adoption and people just trying and experimenting with the things and getting them out the door really fast and seeing where it can go. And that's fine. But again, getting transparency into what the LLM is actually telling people is key. So looking at those traces and those debug logs. But not only that, but being able to share and collaborate on the various pieces of an agentic app.
Mm.
So things like tools and prompts, which again, the agent catalog at Couchbase, we're trying to address this problem at real scale. So a hello world, a prototype app might have 3 tools, a few prompts just to get something going, get something started. But in the long term, a real enterprise may end up with hundreds or thousands of those tools
Yeah.
and prompts. And how do you organize or find anything in that collection? And so again, I think having something like an agent catalog where you can search those and version them and browse all of them is key to getting larger organizational buy-in and cooperation.
Mm-hmm. 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 Ben, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I agree with that. I think we're seeing a lot of companies move towards this like centralized agent layer, if you will, where they're able to have insight into all the different agents that are running, either autonomously or that humans are running, to understand what they're actually doing, what systems are they touching, do they have any right actions going to third-party systems, for example.
Mm.
And then beyond that, they'll throw guardrails on top of those LLMs for things like prompt injection and code injection, malicious code injection, things of that nature.
Mm.
That
Mm.
before anything actually transpires, it gets blocked, and someone can step in.
Good plan. Jared?
Yeah, so I think where we've seen success is where people are doing both, where they're doing rapid adoption and organizational buy-in at the same time. And so our Connect AI, it is a data access layer first and foremost. It is AI enabled now, but we use it internally, and it does that magical phrase that has been super popular for BI and reporting for a long time: data democratization. Right, everyone having
Mm-hmm.
access to data that they need when they need it in the ways that they need it. And so when the entire organization gets easy access to data from the AI tools that they want to experiment with in safe
Mm-hmm.
and secure ways, through that secure layer that we've been talking about, then A, you're going to get rapid adoption because everybody's using it. And then B, you're going to get organizational buy-in because everybody's using it. So, as you're looking at how do I roll out AI, if you haven't started yet, you want to look for something, so that mythical, centralized data access layer, centralized data storage platform, whatever the case is, that gives governed, centralized access to all of your data and lets you do the things that you want to do with AI, those boring tasks, those multi-system tasks that we've been talking about. But I think the biggest key there is you want to make sure that you're building with IT, not around IT. So even if it's just a quick Teams message that says,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I saw NAN. Do we have a policy on NAN usage? Am I allowed to use it in the cloud? Am I allowed to use it on-prem?
Mm.
That model, do we have keys that I can use with specific models? Do we have a preferred model? Just making sure that in the same way that we want to keep the human in the loop when the agent is working with our data, we want to keep IT in the loop when we're building out this AI adoption.
You mentioned the democratization of AI, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So how does low code, no code fit into that? And actually, how does vibe coding fit into that? Jared?
Yeah. So, I mean, the low code, no code has been around for a while. Whether
It
that's
has. That's
building out
true. Yeah.
pipelines, you get a drag and drop interface. If you think about BI tools like Tableau and Power BI, the idea
Yeah.
of building out reports without having to write the SQL, the SQL query to build the data set, it's been around for a while. And so I think it just expands. So now, in the same ways that you were getting these kind of intuitive, business user-friendly experiences with BI and reporting, you're going to see that even more so with agents. NAN, I brought it up before, has this lovely point and click drag around interface that allows you to build a workflow that it shows you exactly what steps are being taken, when they're being taken. The logic is all built in. And so, the technology exists. And then for vibe coding, I think what it lets people do is build a better understanding of what it actually means to build software. So we're kind of going down a slight rabbit hole here, getting a little focused, but when a business user can write a Python script to do a thing and then look at that Python script, they're getting a better understanding of how data is being used, how code is used, what code looks like, and it helps to kind of democratize technical knowledge in the same way that these unified data platforms democratize data access and data connectivity. It's been really exciting. I've seen a ton of people in our organization specifically just open up Claude Code and say, I have this data set, write me a program that does something with it. And over time, it just works. Which is cool.
This is cool. It is cool. It is cool. It probably does give people a better understanding of code, but do they understand when it goes wrong?
I mean, I think the LLMs can do a good job of explaining that.
Can they? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Ben?
Yeah, I think vibe coding specifically, to Jared's point, like democratizes people's understanding of what code actually does, how to build software, and things of that nature. I think it like doesn't commoditize coding itself. I think it kind of democratizes it in a way, but I think where the real technical knowledge still comes into play is like everything around the code, the cloud infrastructure that's needed to like host an application and things of that nature. There's still a lot of technical complexity, but I think going from 0 to 1 on building an app or automating a workflow through vibe coding, it's incredible. And then putting it to production is the next step.
Matthew.
So I'm a developer. Yeah, I'm a developer from way back. And my view about low code and no code has always been the best part of no code and low code is the part where I actually get to put the code in. Right. So that's kind of a sarcastic joke. But I mean, I think if people get really good at interacting with LLMs, they can accomplish quite a lot. And essentially that becomes a programming language, or English is the code now. Right. Especially when you pair it with MCP or other AI tools. So the vibe coding can lead to some really great results, but only if the person entering it gets really specific and narrow. Saying build me an eBay clone, that's not going to lead to something very good, right? But if you say help me change this specific feature of my shopping cart quantity button or something like that, that's going to have a much higher chance of success. And that's the part I think, based on my own experience, that's where LLMs and coding is really, really beneficial.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Which actually leads me into a question that came in from one of our viewers here. Will there still be humans employed to verify that information is correct and that the coding is correct? I added that part to the question. But yeah, so will we still need humans? Jared, you're smiling.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we have to, right? I don't know. Maybe there's a world in which it's just AI selling to AI and marketing to AI, and all of this happens inside some black box somewhere. And I don't know. In an ideal scenario, we're all sipping Mai Tais on the beach while all of this happens.
Prepared by an AI agent, no doubt.
That's right. But I think the reality is that as good as the LLMs are, they are not trained on our business data, right?
Yet.
Opus, as good as it is, it doesn't know what my organization's Salesforce looks like, right? It doesn't know what Glean's CRM looks like. It doesn't know what Couchbase's CRM looks like. It doesn't know our business definitions. It doesn't know what we consider success, what we consider conversion based on website activity, right? We all have those definitions and we can deliver those, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the trust, where you still need to verify the results in order to make sure
and
that
that's a human activity.
Yeah, you got to make sure that you're making decisions that are based on things that are true, not just what the LLM thinks is going to make you happy. And let's be honest, the LLMs are trained for compliance, not accuracy. And so without that careful prompting, that Matthew was talking about, you're going to get a compliant answer, not the correct answer. So yeah, you'll definitely need, the human employed to verify.
Matthew, are you also voting for the human?
Well, I'm voting for the Mai Tai thing for sure. You know how I feel about the drink packages. Yeah, I think human feedback is actually kind of what made ChatGPT so compelling in the beginning. Was it took into account humans' feedback on answers, and I think there are some programmatic approaches maybe to hallucination detection, but I ultimately think that as of right now anyway, who knows what the future will bring. But as of right now, I think a human is best at that. And so let the AI do kind of as much boring work as possible and let the human verify or at least spot check it. I think that's a good approach.
Ben?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's definitely different use cases that fall into different buckets. Like there's a lot of risk involved and zero room for error or margin for error for mistakes by an LLM. And then there's some that there's a lot of room for error. It doesn't really matter if an LLM or an agent makes a little mistake. I think a good example of this is like if I have an agent that's pulling information from all of my different systems and then sending me an email every morning saying, hey, here are your action items that you need to be thinking about for the day. If it's off slightly, it's not going to be a big problem. But if we start looking at agents that are automating like finance workflows and the numbers need to be 100% right, there absolutely has to be human input and oversight to make sure that everything is running properly and there's no mistakes.
Good points. Good points to all of you. Absolutely. Well, that is all the time we actually have today for our questions and our discussion. And we apologize that, excuse me, we were unable to get to all of your questions. But as I stated earlier, they will all be answered via email. And I would like to thank our speakers today, Matthew Groves, DevRel Engineer Couchbase, Jared Johnson, Senior Technology Evangelist CData Software, Ben Wiley, Solutions Engineer Glean. Now, if you would like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same URL that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. Plus, you will receive an email with the URL to view the webinar once the archive is posted. If you would like a PDF of the deck, go to the handout section once the archive is live. And thank you again for joining us.